Jemma Green, and I'm a co-founder and the chairman of Powerledger. We make software for energy utilities and for large companies that help them track and trade energy and derivatives of energy, such as renewable energy certificates and carbon credits. So as an example, in France, we're working with the fourth largest retailer there called Accelerator on a solution called Choose Your Mix. So customers of Accelerator can actually get a renewable tariff but specify where their energy is coming from and by how much. So for example, they can say, I want 15% solar from this solar farm or 10% wind from this farm, and up to 70% of the total can be specified. Whereas normally if you get a renewable tariff from your energy supplier, you're just getting whatever they give you. So we're giving more choice and specificity by using the blockchain as a tracking tool to measure the output of the solar farm or the wind farm and measuring the consumption profile of the customer and matching those two things together and creating a record. Another example is in Europe, a piece of regulation called the Clean Energy Package, which is a pretty important regulatory reform piece to create more open access and local energy markets. And as a result of that regulation, energy retailers are creating what's called energy communities. So anyone could set up and become an energy retailer. For example, a school could offer energy to the mums and dads at the school, and the mums and dads could trade energy with each other. And we have a software solution that allows those retailers to offer that to their customers. So I'd moved back to Australia after being in the UK for 11 years. I worked in investment banking. The first half of my career was in mainstream finance and the second part was in sustainability. So I was looking at environmental risk for the bank, looking at its lending activities for energy, mining, oil and gas sectors. I moved back to Australia in 2012 and was originally going to go to Sydney or Melbourne where their banks are based, but I actually felt compelled to come home to Perth. I really wanted to move back here and be closer to my family. So that involved me contemplating a different career path for myself, and I decided to do a PhD in electricity market disruption, which was inspired by a walk that I'd done across Spain, the Camino de Santiago, and I got this idea that I wanted to build an eco-village. I was introduced to a professor at Curtin University, Peter Newman, who said, well, this would be a great applied research project for a doctorate, and I got persuaded to pursue that. And I was halfway through my doctorate when I had my first child, Amelie, and was introduced to John Bullich, my co-founder and business partner. And he had actually developed applications for parking infringements and was interested for some introductions around that. And I started asking him questions about the blockchain and didn't know a whole lot about it at that stage. And I said, could it do anything for my PhD research project, which was this solar and battery system for an apartment building. And I was trying to find software that could allow the trading of energy within the building, and I couldn't find anything that did that. And we looked together and saw actually applications doing that using blockchain and got very excited and pretty quickly decided to set up Powerledger. There's this funny little cartoon that says life as an entrepreneur. It's a graph that goes like this up and down. It's like, it's great, it's terrible, it's amazing, the world's gonna end. And it's quite raw, I would say, the process of being an entrepreneur, and that keeps you humble as well. It keeps you curious, keeps you trying to find out new information and get knowledge to do better. The lowest point for me would have been at the end of 2018. There was an article written about me and Powerledger, which was like from a journalist that had no background in energy or blockchain, our company even. And he just seemed hell-bent on not listening when we had the conversation, and wrote a really terrible and defamatory article about Powerledger and me. And it was very difficult to deal with that. And like throughout 2019, clients and staff were kind of concerned about this, and it was very hard to say, well, it's not true, and yet the article still existed. And so we took the decision to pursue having the article taken down through the courts, which took 3 years, but we were ultimately successful and the article was found to be grossly misleading and defamatory. That was a very hard process to go through. It took a long time, and I had to really sort of stay focused and optimistic even in the face of all of that. So I think I got a lot of resilience out of going through that process. I wouldn't necessarily wish it upon anyone else, but I'd say that was the hardest thing at the time. Winning the Extreme Tech Challenge on Sir Richard Branson's island in 2018 was a pretty significant high point. Meeting Sir Richard and hearing from him about, I read his book before I went to the island, and he's a really interesting person. He's got dyslexia. He is quite introverted. You see a lot of photos of him online, but he's quite a quiet person. And he was really encouraging, and he gave me a copy of his book and wrote in it and said, "Dear Jemma, may you power the world." And I've been able to stay in touch with him, and he's been really encouraging and given me advice. Some of his team have helped look at some different projects that we've contemplated, and I think that having somebody kind of really take an interest in you that's had such huge success, I think is really encouraging for me and inspiring as well. Perth's a fabulous place to live. I lived in London for 11 years. I've had 3 children since I came back here, and it is a very livable city for raising a family in. People don't have to travel as far to get to work here, which is fabulous. If you were living in Melbourne, you're typically looking at 1.5 hours each way commute, and that is a tax on people's energy. So I think it's a much more compact city. It's a very livable city. It's super clean. It's more affordable, and it's actually in more favourable time zones than other Australian cities. So just for entrepreneurs, I'd say it's really important to have mentors, people that, other entrepreneurs. It was probably only in 2018 when I won the EY FinTech Entrepreneur of the Year award. At the gala dinner, I met all these entrepreneurs, and I had not really encountered that many before. And that was I realized that it was kind of like oxygen, understanding that the things that they're worried about and struggling with were things that, or that they'd overcome, were things that, I was encountering at that time. So I think having mentors that are at different stages of entrepreneur journey is really helpful. And then do an accelerator. I think, there's a lot, Curtin runs the Ignition program, and there's many others, online. They're hugely helpful, so you can wrap your head around all the things you need to be thinking about. It's quite a lot. And, I would encourage people to have a co-founder, at least one. It's much more fun, and, you're going to have different perspectives and solve problems. If I'd just been running the business by myself, the decisions that I would have made look very different to the ones that I've ended up making, having a business partner to run ideas to ground with. Being an entrepreneur is more a marathon than a sprint. You've got to really take care of yourself if you want to go the distance and accomplish, your bigger ambitions. And that's a hard thing, because, you're never at the point where you want to be at, and you feel like you've got to keep working relentlessly on one level, but actually, you've got to kind of take stock and get the balance right, resting and taking care of the other things in your life, not just the business.